I want to save you 4 years or more of mistakes in your business. I've worked with various ecom businesses. I've helped even start an ecom business, and I've seen a lot of people make mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes myself. So I've learned a lot through what other people have done, seeing people who are successful and seeing people who are struggling in the business world and the way that they think about business as a whole. As corny as it might sound, the way that you think about business and your mindset with how you are making decisions is one of the biggest things that affects your success or failure that I've seen. So, the first thing, without further ado, the first thing that is the most important, that this sounds so simple. This right here sounds so simple, but yet everybody overlooks this. Your product that you are selling needs to actually be good. I'll repeat that again. Your product that you are selling needs to actually be good. Now, what do I mean by this? There's no such thing, in my opinion, as a winning product. And what I mean by that is when you hear somebody say, well, what's the winning product that I need to sell? Or how do I find a winning product? What do they really mean? They mean, well, how do I go onto some foreign website and white label, sell some product where I'm not even putting a label on it. So they're going to go drop ship something on some foreign website, or maybe they go on, for example, Alibaba. They find something that they don't really care about, that doesn't solve a real problem, that isn't even in demand, and they just, throw some label on it, whatever it is, right? When people get into ecom and they're asking to find a winning product, are there products out there where you can make money selling them? Yes. But what you need to really be asking if you want to be successful is not, how do I find a winning product? You need to get that out of your head and start thinking about business in a different way. Stop asking, what do I need to sell to make money? And ask yourself, what is a big problem that I can solve? Where is a gap in the marketplace where there's something missing? And how do I make that thing? How do I solve that problem better than all the competitors? That's what you need to be asking if you want to be successful in business, from what I've seen. The products that I see that end up being successful are the people who focus on making their product good, on making it better than competitors. The people who get stuck where they're at, they're focused on quick hacks. They're focused on trying to find the next winning product and ripping ads from people and selling stuff on AliExpress and all this stuff. They're not focused on the stuff that actually works. They're doing what everybody else does. If you do what everybody else does, you're going to get the same results as everybody else. So get the idea of a winning product out of your head and focus on making a winning product. There's no such thing as a winning product. When you're going online and you're selling something that has no demand, that doesn't solve a problem, that people don't have a reason to buy again, your product needs to have all those things if you want to be successful long term, in my opinion. So I'm not making any financial claims. I'm not guaranteeing you success in your business. I don't know your business. But what I can tell you is your product needs to actually be good if you want to be successful in business. And you need to stop focusing so much time on trying to trick people into buying and saying, well, how can I rip these ads online and copy this person's website and then steal their images and do all this stuff that's like half of it's probably illegal, with the stuff that you're doing. How can I do all this stuff to shortcut my way around doing the work? Why don't you just focus on doing the work if you want to actually be successful? That's how you get successful. You realize there's no hack around the work. Right? And yes, are there people out there who make money drop shipping? Yes. But the reality is they've got skill. You have to have skill to be successful at drop shipping. Right? And ideally, drop shipping, when done properly, it's a stepping stone. It's not like they're making a multi-million-dollar brand successful long-term by just drop shipping. It's you validate the product first with people who do drop ship. Now, it requires skill. It requires you understanding how to do it. You validate the product first, then you transition into making it into a real brand. That's how people do it the right way. But what most people do is they spend all their time focused on how to find the winning product, and they spend very little time making their product good. And you need to flip that if you want to be successful in business, from what I've seen. So spend more time making your product good and less time trying to find some winning product or hop on some trend or sell some gag gift where you're not making it actually a good product, where you're not solving a real problem. Think about what the problem actually is, right? Think about a big problem that you can solve that there's a lot of demand for, and solve that problem better. Now, the next thing is you need four things to be successful in business. Not one, not two, not three. You need four things. Now, this one, you could say a good business model instead, depending on the business, what you're selling and everything. But really, if you're in D2C ecom, so if you're selling products, D2C ecom, could even be a service-based business. You could even apply this stuff to service-based. But if you're selling products, lower ticket D2C ecom products where $70 or less, or even around that range, in the $100 range or less, whatever it is, you need repeat customers. Your business will not survive long term if you don't have repeat customers, and if you don't take the time to actually make your product good, and do that as soon as possible. So let's say, for example, you're testing out a product, you got a lower budget, maybe you have some new invention, or maybe even you're drop shipping, whatever it is, and you're drop shipping a product that's actually fairly good, and it solves a real problem, and you've spent the time to actually figure out, hey, how do I find a real supplier to sell this specific product, or whatever, right? Whatever the case is, everybody's business is going to be different, right? But let's say you start to see some success. You're hitting 30K, 40K, 50K months. You're seeing a little bit of success on a small scale. Now is the time when you need to start thinking immediately. Don't delay this for 2 years, 3 years. You need to immediately start thinking about how to make your product better. So let's say you're drop shipping, just for example, because a lot of people do drop ship. I'm not saying it's easy and it's going to be some get rich quick scheme, or whatever, like these other people will tell you. Drop shipping will require some skill if you do it, and it's a lot harder than people make it out to be quite honest with you, because you've got so many people doing it. So it requires a high level of skill. That's what people don't understand, first off. But let's say, for example, you are starting something out where you're drop shipping, right? And you're thinking about how you can turn it into a real business, because maybe you found some product that you actually care about, that's actually in demand, where you have repeat customers. You're drop shipping from the US, and they're offering private label for this specific product. So you got to deal with some manufacturer, whatever, right? And so you're doing drop shipping in a way that's not scammy, and you're actually selling a decent product, right? And so in this case, let's say, for example, you're selling this product, right? And you got repeat customers already and stuff, but you need to make the product better. So what you do is now you maybe find a new manufacturer who can actually, or work directly with the manufacturer who's selling you this product or whatever, right? And you turn this into an even better product. You come out with new flavors. You buy in bulk so you can get your prices down and stuff to have better margins, and you're investing in making the flavors better, making the quality better, coming out with new versions that solve different similar problems and all this stuff. So you're focused on making the product better, improve the packaging, whatever it is. You're focused on these things to make your product and make the delivery better, which in turn over time should help you to have more repeat customers, right? And so if you're coming out with new products, you're making your product better, your customers like your product, it tastes really good, you're getting customer feedback and taking it into consideration. All these things could have an effect on how many people come back to buy it. So if you're focused on that and asking the right questions, and you're asking the question, how do I build a lifelong brand? How do I get repeat customers? That should be what you're focused on. I would focus most of your attention on that, on solving that, rather than what color should I make my logo, or what about this little thing at the footer of my website that nobody sees? How do I tweak this to make the font just perfect? or this page on the website that nobody even goes to. How do I sit here, for hours just perfecting this one little page that nobody even looks at? Like, you're focused on the wrong things, and that's what'll keep you stuck where you're at. Right? So if you focus on the wrong stuff, you could be working very, very hard. But if you're focused on the wrong things, you're probably not going to get anywhere. So you need repeat customers. Now, what's another way you can get repeat customers? You have to understand how to remarket to people, how to get them to buy again. You have to understand retention. So what is a way to get customers to buy again if they've already bought? Well, there's this thing that's very powerful that a lot of people overlook because everybody's focused on ads. How do I make my ads better? How do I reduce my CPA? How do I do this? That's all that most people are focused on, right? And they put all this focus on this thing right here. Now, don't get me wrong, ads are very powerful. Ads can definitely grow a business if you do it properly. And it requires a lot of skill to actually be good at running ads. It requires skill, to be good at running ads, to manage ads, to know who to hire, when you need help with things, how to spot bottlenecks, all of this stuff. It requires, a high level of skill, but it's a very powerful tool. Don't get me wrong. But if you think about it like this, on one hand, let's say your ads, your blended ROAS that you're getting from your ads, maybe it's a 3-to-1, just for the sake of this example. Right, so you get $3 back for every dollar you put in. Maybe more, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 5, whatever. But let's just say it's 3-to-1, 4-to-1, whatever. Now, on the other case, you're running what's called email marketing. Now, with email, this thing over here, you're getting a 42-to-1 return for every dollar that you put in. Which one do you think is going to be more profitable for you? Did you know that email, for many businesses, that is a third of their revenue or more? Some businesses, it may be like 50%. Some businesses, it's even higher. But did you know that email is often like a third of most businesses' revenue? Why don't you put more emphasis on this thing right here that is far more profitable, and stop putting so much emphasis? Not saying negate it, not saying getting new customers into your funnel doesn't matter, because paid ads, it's not going to be as profitable when you're running ads to cold traffic typically, but it is more scalable. It gets the people into your ecosystem or into your funnel, right? It can have a halo effect on multiple different channels where, if you're spending a bunch of money on ads, your Amazon search, your Amazon traffic could go up, your Amazon sales could go up if you're spending a lot of money. So it can have this sort of halo effect, right? But the reality is, you can't just have this thing right here with, being good at paid ads and then not put any attention on retention and actually getting customers to buy again and expect to have a long-term business that is successful. So the next thing, now you need to focus more on repeat customers, right? If you want to be successful long-term, and do that as soon as possible. Be asking the right questions. It's all coming back to your mindset, how you think about things. You need to be asking the right questions. Now, the next thing is you need to be focused on investing in growth. You need all 4 of these things I'm covering here to be able to be successful in business long term. You need to be focused on investing in growth of the business. Now, here's what I mean by that. A lot of people, they have this tendency to want to try to save every dollar. So, for example, they start to see a little success, and what they want to do is, when you see small business owners, this is a very common mistake that people make. They think that they are the only one that can pack orders, that can manage customer service, that can order inventory, that can manage their finances, or do their bookkeeping, and make manufacturing decisions and run their ads and make social media content and all this stuff. And while some of these things may be more important that they are doing them than others, like, for example, if they're the face of the brand, maybe they're the one behind the camera, but they think that they have to do, my point is, they think that they have to do every single thing inside that business themselves And they think that nobody else can do those things as well as they can because it's their business. And the truth is that that is a limiting belief that will keep you stuck where you're at. So when you believe that to be true and you say, well, I have to be the one to edit all my videos because I'm the only one who knows how to edit videos. Are you a professional video editor? If the answer to that question is no, then don't you think there's somebody else out there? There's billions of people on this planet. There is somebody else out there who is smarter than you when it comes to editing videos. Same with your website. There's somebody out there that could make your website better than you can if you are not a professional website designer. Having this ego or having this mindset of I have to have it done my way or everything has to be done the way I would do it will keep you stuck where you're at. And so you have to be willing to invest in growth and be willing to invest in things to grow the business if you want to grow a business. A business is a team sport. It's like a team sport. So if you try to do everything yourself, it's no different than if you're playing football and you've got your guy who's the quarterback, right? Or let's say, for example, you're the coach, but you want to coach this team to a national championship, but you're in the field, you're playing quarterback, you're playing running back, you're playing wide receiver, you're trying to snap the football, and you're trying to play defense and special teams all at once. And then you wonder why your team keeps losing. It's because you were constantly in the game trying to play every position instead of finding the right people and putting them into the right places to grow your business or to win the football game. So you need to understand how to actually invest into the right things to grow a business. And if you don't do that, the longer you put that off, the more it will compound. And the more these mistakes and these issues can get worse and worse because everything has a compounding effect in business. You do something good, it can compound. You do something bad, it compounds. And it affects other areas of the business. So if you are running out of inventory, or whatever it is, because you don't know how to manage your inventory and in ordering and stuff, then all of a sudden it's affecting your ads. Then all of a sudden it's affecting your cash flow. And then all of a sudden now you don't have the money to pay for inventory. You see what I'm saying? So it's this compounding effect that can get worse and worse, or it can get better and better if you're doing the right stuff. Now, the next thing is money management. I have this one in bold because this is, in my opinion, the most important point in here. Outside of having a good product, all four of these things are required. This one right here is the most important one for most people. Because if you don't know how to manage money, how are you going to run a business? A business, it's an exchange of money. It is an exchange of value in which you get paid for the thing that you are offering. So if you don't know how to manage money, how are you going to run a business? Now, here's what I mean by this. What do you need to run a business? You need money. You need money to pay payroll. You need money to pay for ads. You need money to pay your manufacturers. If you don't have stock half of the year because you aren't managing your money properly, and you go put all your money into something that doesn't give you a return, or maybe you take out, merchant cash advance loans because you think that's your only option, and you had something you wanted to pay for that you thought was the way that you should have done it at the time, or whatever it is, right? If you don't know how to manage money and you make poor financial decisions, now it has this compounding effect on every other area of your business. So you don't know how to manage money, or you make some big financial mistakes that you repeat, whatever it is. And now all of a sudden you're running into inventory issues, right? And now because you're running into inventory issues, then you got to scale back ad spend. And then because you got to scale back ad spend, now it compounds and gets even worse. And now you're out of stock. And then you got manufacturing bills coming up that are due. And now you don't have money for the manufacturing bills. And so now you have to borrow money potentially, or you have to delay, even worse, delay placing these orders. Then it just repeats itself again. And it's this endless cycle. And it all stems from not knowing how to manage money, not knowing how to budget, and not understanding cash flow, because they don't teach you this stuff in school. And so most people, they overlook this very important thing that is required to run a business because this isn't fun. It's kind of boring to learn about this stuff. And so they overlook this right here. And or they're kind of set in their ways with some people, and they just like they have their mind made up that they're going to do things a certain way, and they do things that way, and then guess what happens? They run into these major issues, right? This is the most important part for you to understand. You need to know where you are putting your money. You need to budget that if you want to be successful in business. And I'll add to this also. Another thing to keep in mind if you're a business owner, if you are making poor financial decisions and people see that and you aren't listening to other people when they try to help you, and they say, well, hey, look, I really think, this may be causing some issues here in your business or whatever it is. To be fair, it's your business. You can do what you want. But if you aren't listening to the people around you who are trying to help you, maybe who you put into positions of, leadership, and you choose to do things your way, and then you keep running into the same issues, that can be very demoralizing for employees, right? Or just imagine you're a regular employee, or maybe you're a contractor who's working, full time or whatever it is, right? Maybe you're even a manufacturer, right? If every time that it comes time to pay bills, every time it comes time to pay that person or whoever it is, you're constantly complaining about how money's tight and you don't have any money to pay bills. And they can see what the issue is. That can be very demoralizing, for somebody who wants to be successful, because successful people, they want to be successful too. They want you to be successful, but they also want to be successful themselves. And so if they hear about how you don't have any money all the time and you're constantly complaining about bills, and they see that it's because of your lack of money management skills, it's understandable. If somebody's got a new business, things may be tough or whatever, but you got to keep in mind, if you are constantly making your money management problems other people's problems, that can be a very demoralizing thing. And it can also be a very demoralizing thing from a culture standpoint if, for example, you are wanting to attract top level talent and you don't have this clear vision put out, right? So if you don't have a clear vision on success that you want to achieve, that can be very difficult to actually get high level talent to want to work with you and in your ecosystem, right? Because that's the real value, is getting that top level talent who performs at a very high level to want to work with you. That's real leverage. It's not doing everything yourself. It's attracting the people who are very smart and very talented and very skilled. And if you don't have the right culture in place, or say, for example, you only want to pay people well under market rate for anything that you hire, right? So you're hiring somebody and you think, well, I want to hire the cheapest guy I possibly can for this role. So I'm hiring a CRO contractor, right? And this guy over here, he charges $80 an hour. This guy right here, he charges $30. And so to save money, I'm going to hire the $30 an hour guy. Here's what you didn't see there. The $80 an hour guy can do, most likely, in my opinion, he's going to do 4 times the work in the same amount of time. So a job that takes him 5 hours is going to take the $30 an hour guy maybe 20 hours. And he's going to get to have better output because he's more skilled. He's going to be less liable to make mistakes. So it actually, if you do the math on that example, it actually saves you money to hire the $80 an hour guy just from the level of output alone, not to mention the lack of mistakes, less mistakes. You're going to have probably better quality of work, result in a better ROI overall. Like just from the efficiency standpoint of being able to do more in less time, it would have saved you money in that example. But people see that $30 an hour and they want to go as cheap as possible, right? There's nuance here. There's some things where you can go cheaper. But the reality is, understand, this is part of money management and understanding how business works, that just because something is cheaper does not mean it's going to save you money. I'll repeat that again. Just because something is cheaper does not mean it's going to save you money. You have to understand how this stuff works. And you have to actually understand how to map things out and think about expenses. You have to understand what things you should even be investing in, like CRO to improve your website conversion rate. You think if you're making 50K a month, let's say your conversion rate's 1% in this hypothetical example, and you see a 2x increase, you go from 1% to 2%. What happens to your business from that? You go from 50K a month essentially to 100K a month. And CRO, I mean, it may cost you what? To go from a 1% to 2% conversion rate. This is a hypothetical example, right? It's kind of an exaggerated example, but I mean, maybe it costs you a few $1,000s with a good CRO guy, a smaller agency, or whatever. I mean, maybe a few $1,000s. You could see a massive ROI from that if it's done right and if you're actually solving the right problem. Same with email. Email, you can see a big ROI from that as well. So you have to understand what things that actually make sense to invest in, right? That's a big part of this. And then lastly, the last thing is you got to know how to build systems. There has to be some level of structure with what it is that you're doing. If somebody is like in a position of leadership in your company, maybe you're starting a small business and you got somebody who's kind of your, helping you manage everything in the business. And you don't have any kind of like structure about whatever it is that you're doing. They don't really even understand what their role is. That can be frustrating too, especially if, you're hiring a manager or something and you don't really give them clear instructions, or maybe somebody's working in your shop, packing orders, doing fulfillment, and you don't like explain to them clearly and take the time to lay out clearly what it is that they need to do, then that can be kind of frustrating too, because people won't understand like what are they even supposed to be doing, right? And that's up to you if you were in a position of leadership to make that clear to them, right? And so you need to be willing to, if you're running a business, whenever you're bringing somebody on, take the time to make sure if they're doing something, and you're hiring somebody new or whatever, take the time on your end to make sure that they are clear about what it is that you're doing. And ideally, with some cases, you're going to want to have things already prepared for them if possible. And you need to have systems that are very simple systems that can be followed and pointed back to. Not a system that works for you, but is confusing for everybody else. A system that works for everybody in that business. And it's very simple and efficient and easy to use. Typically, if you keep running into issues, it's probably going to come back to, in some way, shape, or form, the systems that you have in place in your business. And if you keep running into issues, you might not have a very good system in place. So have good systems, build simple systems, and take the time up front to do this with whatever it is that you're doing to make things more efficient. Anytime you have an opportunity to make something more efficient and simpler, take that opportunity. So the next thing, there is no hack around these 4 things. Hold on. There's no hack around the 4 things that I just listed. You don't need just one of them. You don't need 2 of them. You don't need 3 of them. You need all 4 of those things, in my opinion, to be successful in business long term from everything that I've seen. So do not negate those 4 things, especially the money management and repeat customers, but you need all 4 of those. You could be doing a great job of managing your money. You could have lots of repeat customers. But if you're not investing into actually growing the business, or you're investing into the wrong things, maybe, for example, you go and you buy, some new bass fishing boat for $50,000 on payments, you put half of it on payments or something. You just made a poor financial decision, but 2, you're investing in something that is not going to give you an ROI if you're a small business, and you need to be taking all that money and all that profit and income that's coming in and putting it back into the business to make the business more efficient. You should be thinking about how you can make the business more efficient. A lot of times that requires an investment. You have to understand that what you're investing in is to make the business more efficient and more profitable. If you put the money into conversion rate optimization and they do a good job, you can make your business more efficient from that. If you invest the money into lowering your cost of goods, you're making the business more efficient because you're lowering your cost of goods. You see what I'm saying? So you have to be thinking about this stuff in the right way to be able to be successful. So you cannot hack your way around those 4 things. Having an ego in your business will destroy your business also. This is another thing that people run into is they start to see a little bit of success and they get this massive ego about them as if nobody can tell them anything. So they think that once they hit their first 50K a month, 100K a month, they see a little bit of success on a small scale. Now all of a sudden they can't learn anything from anybody, right? They think that even though their bank account doesn't look very good, they're still struggling in business. They're still having a hard time. They think that because they made a little bit of money or had one good month or whatever, that they can't learn anything from anybody. And they know everything there is to know about business. They think they're an expert at video editing. They think they're an expert at, manufacturing, engineering, everything. And they don't want to listen to anybody. This is what you see a lot of times. And the people with the biggest egos get stuck where they're at, and they usually end up going into debt. And if they don't change that at some point, they end up going out of business, right? So ego is not going to help you make money. Having pride and saying, well, my pride won't allow me to do this, or my ego isn't going to allow me to hire somebody to do this job. It tells me I need to do it on my own, all by myself. Your ego will keep you stuck where you're at because business is a team sport. You have to be willing to work with other people, in my opinion, if you want to actually grow a business. You can't do every job on your own. It's not possible. It's not physically possible. So if you have this idea that you're going to do every single thing on your own, your ego is what's keeping you stuck where you're at. Your inability to listen will keep you stuck. So be careful with that. Don't let your ego keep you stuck where you're at. If you've got a good product with potential, especially, be willing to listen to others, take other people's feedback into consideration if you're asking them for help on things, and not just try to do everything your way if you don't understand something. The next thing, bad financial decisions. This kind of ties into ego. Bad financial decisions will destroy a business. If you're going and you're doing things that are really dumb with your money, like taking out these merchant cash advance loans for things that don't give you a return, right? Look, everybody makes mistakes, and I'm not knocking it if you've done these things, but understand that if you repeat these things for long enough, it can destroy your business. So if you're going and taking out Shopify loans because Shopify is calling you up, now that you're starting to make some money, you start to get these calls from Shopify on how you could get this capital, and they're sitting there sweet talking you, telling you all this great stuff about how you need to borrow the money from them and how you can use it to grow your business and make all this money. And so you think, well, what would it hurt? Let me take out this Shopify loan, for 15% of my sales or whatever. It may vary. But let's say, for example, they're taking 15% of your sales. You're making 50K a month, right? So you're seeing a little success, not quite to a bigger business yet, but you're starting to see a little success on a smaller scale. You take out a Shopify loan, you go and you spend it on some stuff, without knowing if it's going to give you a return. You kind of throw it towards this stuff over here, some random product that you came up with, or, whatever it is. Maybe put it to improving your warehouse or something that's not going to give you an actual return, right? And so you took the money and you put it into something that's not going to give you a return, so working on your warehouse, whatever, new product launch. Now, 15% of your sales of that 50K a month or whatever it may be, we'll call it 15%. 15% of your sales now is going to paying back something that is not making you any money. So if you're doing 50K a month, you're paying $7,500 if that's 15% of your sales. $7,500 every single month that you have to pay back at 50K a month towards this thing that's not making you any money. Do you see how that can destroy a business? Maybe on a normal month, you might have had $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 left over after payroll, or maybe a little more, who knows? But now all of a sudden, guess what? You're in the negatives because you're paying back this loan that's not making you any money. So avoid bad financial decisions. Yes, merchant cash advance loans may be easier to get if you're a business that's making money. Doesn't mean you need to be taking them out. Take your time to educate yourself on this stuff if you want to be successful and avoid going into debt or bankrupting yourself. and crashing and burning and going out of business. All right, so the next thing, the most expensive way to learn is through mistakes, right? And so if you keep repeating the same mistakes over and over, so say for example, let's say for example, you're starting a supplement brand, right? You're starting yourself a supplement brand and you don't know how to run ads, and you say, well, I'm just going to go run some ads, throw some stuff up and hope it works. And we're just going to spend some money. And you see a bunch of engagement coming in with this ad. You got some pretty girl on there, and she looks attractive or whatever, some woman, and it's getting a bunch of likes, it's getting a bunch of comments. So you think, well, this ad's working, it's bringing me a bunch of sales. So you start spending more money, but the bank account just gets worse and worse and worse because you're looking at the wrong metrics, right? You're looking at the wrong things to determine that it's successful. You see the likes and the comments and the views, and you think it's performing well, right? Well, little did you know, the ad's just getting a bunch of engagement, but it's not actually growing the business because it's not applying any marketing fundamentals to that ad. And so you're just basically throwing a bunch of money at the fire, lighting your money on fire, because you're running your ads yourself, running ads that aren't even really driving sales, right? It's not really doing anything. It's getting engagement and attention, but the people, all they're looking at is that girl on there that looks good, the lady that looks good or whatever. All they're looking at is that. They don't even pay attention to your product, your supplement that you're selling, right? So you're wasting thousands of dollars basically throwing money at these ads that get a bunch of engagement but aren't driving sales because you aren't skilled and you don't understand what actually makes a good ad. So that's one of the most expensive ways to learn is through making these mistakes. Now, it can be a very valuable teacher. But it's one of the most expensive ways to learn if you're trying to learn how to do something that you don't understand. So the cheapest way, in my opinion, to learn is to find somebody who's already done it. Believe it or not, the cheapest way to learn something is to find somebody who's already done this at a high level, who you can trust, who's good at what they do, highly skilled, and pay them to teach you, right? A lot of times that is going to save you thousands of dollars in mistakes that you can't see. So don't think, oh, well, this person, they charge, several $100s or $500 a month or something for their coaching program. I'm not going to pay that. I'm just going to do this myself. And then you cost yourself thousands of dollars a month going into that highly technical thing because you didn't want to spend, because of ego or whatever, didn't want to spend that $500 a month or whatever it was, right? So understand when you're going into these highly skilled, highly technical things, the most expensive way to learn often is from mistakes. And then lastly, the boring work that isn't exciting or fun is often what grows a business. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're in the NBA. Do you think that every person who's winning in the NBA likes doing all the drills? They like running the laps. They like getting up early and going to practice. They do those things that they don't really enjoy, the boring work that's required, because they know how important it is to getting the result that they want. They don't love running those laps around the court or doing those drills that may be difficult or whatever it is. But guess what happens if they don't do those things? They lose. It's the same way in business. When you neglect all this boring, predictable stuff and you focus on the exciting stuff only, and you say, well, I just want to play the game. I don't want to actually shoot the free throws. I don't want to get up early and go to practice. I don't want to do all this practice work. I just want to play the game. Don't expect to beat the people who are doing those things. Don't expect to compete at a high level if you're unwilling to do the same level of work that those people are doing. If you're trying to shortcut the process, you're not going to get the same result, right? And another thing, just because you start doing the right thing, right? Say, for example, you start doing the right thing for a few weeks, a month. Don't expect to see some major results very quickly if you've been doing the wrong thing for several years, right? And so let's say, for example, I'm a fat guy. Now, maybe that's a bad word to use. I'm an overweight person. I weigh 500-600 pounds, right? And I'm trying to lose weight. If I go and I get on the treadmill every day for a month and I finally start, getting in shape, I start eating healthy and stuff, and then I'm only down a couple pounds or whatever after the first month, that doesn't mean I'm doing the wrong thing. It means I'm just not doing it for a long enough period of time, right? And so it's the same thing in business. Just because you start doing the right things and they don't work immediately, within a couple of weeks, doesn't mean you're doing the wrong things necessarily, right? So you got to understand that as well. So anyways, if you guys found this helpful, this is a kind of long video, very in-depth on a lot of this stuff. This is pretty much everything that I've learned over the past 4-ish years or so about business. So if you found this helpful, feel free to leave a like, comment below what you want to see next, and subscribe for more. But anyways, that is it.